Good afternoon. My name is Kimberly Jackson. As you know, we met earlier, and I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Strategic Policy Solutions. I'm very grateful for your time today because I know how busy you are, Jim. And I'm just going to take time to just cue our participants to let them know that we are talking about an important topic, which is insurance that people really need to know about. And I'm honored again to speak with you, Jim, because you have a wealth of information in our community as a leader within the chamber, at the beaches, and for entertainment. So can you share a little bit about who you are first, and then we'll get into why you care so much about the insurance lens for our community.
Sure. Thanks, Kim. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you today about a very hot and important topic, which is property insurance or home insurance. A lot of stuff in the paper about it, and we're going to chat about that. So first of all, again, my name is Jim Everett. I'm an insurance agency owner. My wife and I own Everett Financial Group, which owns a great Florida insurance agency in Madeira Beach, Florida. We live in Reddington Shores, so we live at the beach, we work at the beach, and we're very sensitive to the property and flood insurance situations here in the state of Florida. So today we'll talk about property insurance, but I've been doing that for many years. I also sit on the board of directors for the Treasure Island Madeira Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I'm involved in quite a few local organizations and interact pretty regularly with our local legislative delegation, both on the House side and also on the Senate side, which our Senator Jeff Brandes, who's been very active in property insurance reform, and we're very grateful for that because he has really made quite a few efforts to move things forward.
Thank you so much. Senator Brandes works very hard with us with ISPS too, and has lended his time many times over the past couple of years. Let's just start basics for those people who don't understand how we got here. If you could just enlighten us where we were before and how we got here.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of history. I'll take you back to 1992 or pre-1992. So in those days, most of the homes in Florida were insured by the major national insurance companies like the State Farms and the Allstates and the Farm Bureaus. They held the great majority of the policies here in the state of Florida. Hurricane Andrew trained all of them that it is not a good idea to have that much risk in the state of Florida concentrated. So kind of out of that grew a couple things. Citizens was born as the insurer of last resort. And also you begin to see Florida-based insurers popping up to fill the gaps where State Farm and Allstate had pulled out. So quite a few people, probably right after 92, lots and lots and lots of State Farm and Allstate policies and Farm Bureau policies were canceled as they begin to try to reduce their risk. So now what they try to do is, that's why people look at insurance companies, look at zip codes and look at risk, because they try not to get too concentrated in specific areas of the state. So that industry was born, and it kind of, a lot of these companies were born out of a citizens takeout program. When Rick Scott was governor, he led an initiative to depopulate Citizens and try to reduce their policy count. So some of these companies were born out of that process. They became takeout companies. So they took over Citizens policies and moved them under their umbrella. And then as they grew, they began to write new business policies on their own. So that's how quite a few of the companies like Heritage and some others got their feet under them as insurers. So that kind of speaks to where the industry is or was. Now, for the last 3 years, the insurance industry, the Florida-based insurance carriers have lost roughly $1.5 billion a year for the last 3 years in a row. There, at one time, as recently as 11 or 12 months ago, there were 54 Florida-based carriers. 52 of them lost money last year. So, and we hadn't had a storm. So, I mean, if you think about it, Irma was in 2017. Michael was in the same time frame, but we really haven't had a storm in the last 3 years. So how are these companies losing $1.5 billion a year with no hurricanes?
So now that brings it, I mean, many of us are homeowners. I am a homeowner. I got my little notice and I'm like, what is going on? What is your thought process about what is being said in the news and what's going to happen in special session?
Well, there's been a lot of conversation about tort reform. The legislature has been kind of deadlocked on that for some time. They did pass a pretty major initiative last year, which tried to address some of the issues around roof replacement, which has been a huge cost driver for the insurance industry here in Florida. Part of the building code that was established in the 70s required, if there was a certain number or percentage of your roof that was damaged, you had to replace the whole roof.
Yes.
So there's one thing, that's one thing that we're hoping the legislature is going to look at is some building code revisions, because that's really not required any longer. The other thing is the simple concept of actual cash value on a roof. So what is that? What's that a fancy term? Actual cash value is a fancy term for depreciated value. So there's been some discussion. Yeah, there's been some discussion about a roof, so a roof is 20 years old. A roofing company comes in or an inspector comes in and examines the roof and says, your roof needs to be replaced. And I found some hail damage. So the insurance company ends up putting a brand new roof on and the roof was 20 years old. Well, there probably should be a little bit of responsibility on the homeowner side. We do it in automobile insurance already and have for years. If you get in an accident in a 2014 Toyota Camry, the insurance company's not going to pay you for a 2022 Toyota Camry. They're going to pay you the value of that 2014 Toyota Camry. And then if you go buy a 2022 Camry, you'll have to pay the difference. So that's kind of what's been discussed on roofs. And the other thing that hopefully will be discussed is some adjustment to the Florida Catastrophic Fund, or the CAT Fund, to reduce the required contributions that the insurers are making. Because one of the challenges that we're looking at now is a lot of companies are approaching the renegotiation of their reinsurance contract. So insurance companies buy insurance for themselves. So they don't have enough money to cover all their risks. So they buy insurance for that and they pay for that. So a lot of those contracts are coming up on July 1st. Historically, they've been able to buy reinsurance and pay for it quarterly. So if it's $100 million for reinsurance, they pay $25 million a quarter.
As a homeowner myself, when you get those notices, I always get to, why does the average person care? What are we going to tell your clients, the community's constituents, about the landscape moving forward? Because this is quite expensive and very scary in a time period where there are some challenges for most families from a fiscal perspective.
No, it's true. In Florida, I mean, we represent one of the most expensive states in the nation for home insurance. A recent study said that we're the second most expensive for automobile insurance, but that's another conversation for another day. Yeah, it's getting very expensive, and it's starting to impact real estate transactions, because a real estate lender looks at debt to income ratio, and nobody even thought about it. Homeowners insurance, it was kind of an afterthought. Well, now it's a major factor in whether or not someone can qualify for a mortgage because of the cost of the insurance. So there's a lot of frustration, and believe me, my agents in my office are, have been getting beaten about the head and shoulders for probably 18 to 24 months on this issue, because rates continue to rise. I mean, there's 3 carriers went in for rates just this past week, and they average from 25 to 48%. So, when you see those kind of increases, that's just not sustainable for the average consumer, which is why it's so important for there to be some reform. And people yell and scream at us and yell at the insurance companies, but at the end of the day, the state of Florida and the legislature determines and regulates insurance and determines, what we can and cannot do. So obviously, if you look at one statistic, which David Altmeyer, the director of the Office of Insurance Regulation, actually quoted during the session last year, and that number's changed slightly, but 9% of all the lawsuits in the United States of America are in the state of Florida regarding property insurance. So you think
Wow.
about that, nine
Yes.
percent. So we represent 9% of the actual claims. I mean, I meant to say claims. We represent 9% of the claims nationally. We represent 79% of the lawsuits nationally. So, you know, you think about, we represent less than 10% of the claims. We represent almost 80% of the lawsuits filed in the United States or here in Florida. Well, that just speaks to a problem.
It does. It does. A litigious problem. Yes. So I can't thank you enough for your time, for your patience. You provided some extremely invaluable information. I hope that we can continue this conversation in a full program because it's important as we are educating young people about the opportunity for housing and their career path and balancing their income and their debt, what their options are, particularly in a vibrant city and state and county that we have. So thank you again for your time.
You're welcome, Kimberly. I appreciate the time you've given me today. Thank you so much.